What is up, ladies and gents? We are back for yet another House of the Dragon review. Episode 8, so closing in to the end of the first season, and holy god, was this a good episode. Before we go any further, it goes without saying, this is going to contain huge spoilers, so if you haven't seen episode 8, make sure you come back at a later time to check out this video. Likewise, if you do enjoy the video, please do leave a thumbs up. Feel free to come and subscribe to the channel if you're brand new, and don't forget to hit the bell icon on the channel homepage, and you'll be notified as and when episode 9 drops, and also any other content that we post here on the channel. Episode 8, Lord of the Tides. By God, is this intense. So we are 6 years on from episode 7. So a little bit of a time jump again, but it's all good because it's delivered beautifully in this episode. We see Princess Rhaenys talking to one of her sons about the sea snake being destroyed, i.e. the dad of Driftwood, as I call him, Corlys, I think his name is. He's destroyed by a storm, and we just see the leftovers of what was his ship or raft. It's in tatters, it's in pieces. Everyone's freaking out about who is now going to claim the throne of Driftmark. There's a bit of a jostling going on between who has the rightful claim. We then get a scene where we see a hooded figure walking into what appears to be like a mountain type of region. And all of a sudden, there is a little bit of digging going on. We see some digging. And then we see Mr. Daemon digging up a clutch of dragon eggs, pulled out beautifully from the ground. And he says to the maester, who is waiting at the bottom of the mountain, that Syrax has laid a fresh clutch of eggs. And says to the maester, go and store them, put them in the right places, make sure they grow well. We then move on to the next scene where Rhaenyra is with her sons, Jace and Joffrey, I think. I can't remember all of them, there's just too many. And Maester is trying to teach I think it's one of the eldest boys that she had with the ex-Kingsguard, who we think is dead, but I think he's going to come back in a later episode. But anyway, the Maester's trying to teach him High Valyrian. It's not going very well. Daemon then delivers a message to Rhaenyra saying that he has overheard that Rhaenys is disputing claim of their house. So not only is she looking to make claim for the throne, for her grandchildren, her children, and for herself, she's also looking to move to King's Landing to stake her claim for the Iron Throne, cement the legacy of her people, cement the legacy of her family's name. So Rhaenyra is clearly not having any of that. She's jumping on with Daemon, and they're basically flying off to King's Landing, not having any of it. We then see an Alicent type Cersei going on. So she's head of the council meeting. We get a scene where we're in King's Landing. She's sat around the table with a couple of maesters, a couple of goons, basically. Hand of the King's there, Otto, Dad, he's back. And she's looking very much like Cersei, all clad in black, gold shoulder guards, and she's looking very mean. So she's going into a little bit of a Cersei transition. But she's at the head of this council meeting. And I was instantly at this point thinking, where the hell's Viserys? Please no, please no. I hope they didn't kill him off screen, and they haven't. He's still alive in some form. There he is. He looks quite battered in this episode, which we'll touch on in a minute. They then start talking about the sea snake and the risk of the claims that are coming. Alicent says that she is going to be fair. She's going to hear what Rhaenyra has to say. She's not going to dismiss anyone. Everyone's got a fair say. They're putting out warnings to Alicent. They're saying that there's going to be claims against her name, claim against her family, her sons, especially Aegon, who's the eldest and technically is the next in line. And Alicent kind of politely says, I'm here to do what a queen does. I'm here to listen to their claims, but I'm not worried. I'm not worried about what's going to come. I'm not worried about the accusations that's going to happen. I'm not worried about how this is going to turn out. So she's quite confident. We then see a scene where Rhaenyra sees Viserys, and this is where we first see Viserys. He is bedridden. He looks hanging. Half his face is missing. He's got a lack of eyeball in one socket. He's got a bit of a mask type, bandaging going on. And it's not really clear as to what's happened, but clearly over time, since he cut his hand on the throne, that curse has laid dormant in him, and it's causing sepsis to form in his body. He's slowly deteriorating. And he actually reminded me of that doctor from Outlast. You know, the guy that runs around with the scissors? Looks absolutely like him. He's got skin hanging off. He's all gaunt. He looks like Gollum a little bit. He looks like he's done in. So he's bedridden. Rhaenyra sees him and goes in He's kind of half blind in the one eye he has got. He's lost his eye socket, like I said. He's hunched over, he's haggard, he's coughing. He can't really make sense of who is in front of him. And then Daemon also goes in behind Rhaenyra after they have a little chat and tells Viserys about the petition and says, are you going to do anything about this? It's like, come on, dude, give him a chance. He's completely incapacitated. He is completely out of it. But anyway, Daemon being Daemon just turns around and says, the petition is going to cause us issues. It's going to threaten the Targaryen name. And it's all going to be about who ascends the Driftmark throne. But once we give that person power, they're then going to have a seat and a place amongst us, which means it's going to be a threat to our lineage as well. So Daemon puts that out to Viserys. We then see Aegon and Viserys. Not Aemond, Aegon and Viserys. So yet again, Rhaenyra's been busy. She's popped out 2 more babies. This time they look a little bit more Targaryen. Long white silver hair. And it's clear that Daemon and Rhaenyra have had a little bit of a shebang. So these are the offspring of those two. Sick and twisted. So at the same time, Viserys has inherited a nephew and grandchild, all the same person, because it's his daughter's child, but also his brother's child. So it's kind of like a nephew-grandchild kind of hybrid. Targaryens for you. But yeah, they've got 2 more kids in the mix. King Viserys is incredibly happy with this. He says, oh, more Targaryens, loves it. Comes to life a little bit. Daemon then notices that he has been drinking from a cup. One of the maids say that it's tea. And as we know, straight away, our hunch is they're putting some kind of crap in the tea to make him wither, to make him old. They were told it's milk of the poppy. Daemon picks up the cup, gives it a good sniff, Inspector Gadget style. And Viserys asks for more tea. So he's kind of hooked on this stuff. We get the impression that whatever's in that tea is not really doing him any good. It's probably numbing the senses. It's numbing him. It's taking him out of it. He's probably high as a kite, but also it's not doing much for his body either. He's deteriorating at quite a rapid rate now, and he's aged massively from the 6 years that we last seen him. So as the episode goes on, we see more and more of Viserys, and we see how badly afflicted he's become. I think he's going to be dead by episode 9. If not, by the end of episode 10, he is definitely going to be kaput. He's going to be out of it. There's absolutely no way that this guy can go on any longer whatsoever. So Viserys is looking like the Walking Dead. Daemon sniffs the cup. He's adamant that there's something in the tea. We then see Alicent, and she's in her black gown again, looking very Cersei-like. She speaks to her maid, Diana, one of them. I think it's Diana. And she's in pieces, she's crying, and she says, what's wrong? And she basically says that Aegon took advantage of her. She was bending over, doing something, and Aegon came in and was being Aegon, basically, being an absolute perv. He defiled her, he's violated her, he's raped her, and then Alicent believes 100% that she's not lying, because the maid's getting quite upset. She says, I don't want to accuse the prince. I don't want to say he's done this, he's done that, when he hasn't. But actually, he has. I wouldn't lie to you. And Alicent's like, it's okay, don't worry. She hugs her and says, I completely understand what you're saying. She says it very calm and collected, which is quite worrying, because you would have thought if that's something that your children is capable of, you do not want to hear that coming from someone's mouth. But Alicent absolutely knows what Aegon's about. And instead of addressing it in the way that we should, if it was anyone else, non-family, she takes a very calm and calculated approach. She just says, don't worry, I'll sort it out, leave it with me. And then she just wants reassurance from the maid that it won't get out. She just says, don't say anything, I'll handle it. I'm worried about what this will do for his image, for your image, for my image. And the maid's like, no, it's fine, I won't say anything. So she gives the maid some coins. She literally pays her off and says, keep your mouth shut, I'll deal with it. And then she brings in the tea. If you remember from episode 4, I think it was, or 5, after Rhaenyra slept with what we thought she slept with Daemon, but she didn't. She slept with Sir Criston. A tea was brought in, which is essentially the morning after pill, and that was reducing the risk of her conceiving and the risk of her completely giving birth and things like that. So Alicent has brought in the same tea for the maid and says, drink this, it'll be fine, we just need to be sure. So she doesn't want that getting out. She's becoming more and more like Cersei. If you remember how much of a dick Joffrey was, Cersei, although she knew Joffrey was a dick, she still stood by him as her mother, as the son, and all that kind of stuff. And just really protecting the name more than anything else, because the whole kingdom knew that Cersei was banging Jaime. It was only till the later episodes that they actually admitted it to people, that they actually were opener and said, yeah, so what, we're fucking, what are you going to do? But right up until that point, they were very protective of the secret getting out, which is the whole reason why Ned Stark got his head chopped off. He found out what was going on. He tried to put a stop to it and tried to say, this is wrong. This is, you're not the true, Joffrey's not the true heir to the throne. He's not a Baratheon, he's a Lannister. And then this is the same principle here. So Alicent is absolutely putting a stop to this rumor getting out. She doesn't want her son's name to be tarnished. She doesn't want him known as a pervert, a rapist, as someone that defiles women, because that will actually threaten her lineage, her name, and the name of Viserys as well. So she knows how important that is and how important the public image is out there. So she gives her the tea and says we need to put a stop to it. We then get a scene where Alicent walks in on Aegon, he's ass naked. She pulls the blanket off of him, slaps him and says, what are you playing at? At first he's kind of like, oh, what do you mean? What are you talking about? She gives him a bit of a pimp slap and says, do you know what day it is? And he's like, I don't know what day it is. And then she hits him again and says, you're no son of mine. So she gives him the absolute smackdown and reminds him that he's a little pervert and that what he's doing is wrong and that he's absolutely pissing all over his claim, his birthright. And actually, just as a man, he's absolutely becoming a dick. And Alicent sort of disowns him in this scene. She says, you're no son of mine, feels disgraced, and gives him a little backhand just to remind him how much of a perv he is. We then see Daemon and Rhaenyra confronting Alicent. They walk into what looks like one of the spare bedrooms in the huge castle that is King's Landing, the Red Keep, and they already start butting heads. Daemon mentions the drink that Viserys is drinking and says, I don't feel it's fit for purpose. You know what's in that tea, sort of thing. Alicent goes very Cersei again, tries to play it off, but he's very sort of calm, collected with it, and says, I've stood by my husband all this time, how dare you? What are you here to talk about anyway? Blah, blah, blah. And Rhaenyra says, we are here to remind you that my claim is still true. It was put in place by my father. It's still in place now. Why are we even having this meeting about the kings and queens of Driftmark, and why are we even talking about the succession to the throne? Why are we even doing this petition? So Daemon also mentions that Viserys is in no way, shape or form fit to say anything now, that it should be his word still stands, but Alicent is saying we need to have this out in the open, we need to discuss it, we need to go to a vote. And Daemon says, what use is he going to be? He's just full of grunts and moans. He's ill, he's bedridden. Also, you know what you're feeding him. And he notices that the Targaryen sigils have been replaced with the symbol of the seven gods. So, doesn't go down very well. Alicent notices this and just says, we need to move forward with our religion. It's not just about Targaryens. There's other kingdoms that we need to consider. And very cleverly, again in very much Cersei fashion, plays it down, is very intelligent, and sort of politically answers the question by dodging it and just coming up with, I'm thinking of everybody. That's why I've took all this down. I'm thinking about the future. We need to think future. We need to think about what this means for our houses and what it means for the people of Westeros. So very cleverly moves on from the subject. We then see Rhaenyra's two boys messing around with armory. They're picking up swords. So they're outside. They're talking about, the great soldiers of the past and what they're going to do. And then I think it's the youngest boy, Joffrey, says, about his claim to the throne. And they're discussing about why they're here, why the parents are here, what they're here to discuss, i.e. who's going to succeed the throne when Viserys is gone. And one of them says, I would have more claim if I looked a little bit like Sir Laenor. They just have a discussion about essentially what they've overheard the adults saying, jostling for position, discussing who actually has the claim to the throne, and just sounding quite worried about it. And they're actually in conflict themselves. So although the adults are having this massive row about who's going to take the Driftmark throne and who's going to take the Iron Throne when Viserys is gone, they're still debating it now amongst the children. It's filtering down, the drama's filtering down, the rage, the upset, and the need of entitlement and the sense of entitlement is filtering down to the kids. and they're butting heads with each other as well. We then see Aemond, aka Sir Eye Patch, Sir Sephiroth. He looks absolutely like Sephiroth in this scene, just with an eye patch. Looks absolutely badass. He's got a nice long fencer weapon, like a rapier. He's sparring with Sir Criston. He's actually doing really well. He seems to have aged massively. I know this is on from 6 years from the last episode, but he has really, really jumped up in age. And he looks like an absolute monster. So he's sort of like got all the stances. He's blocking. He's hitting people. He actually gets a sword up to Sir Criston's neck. So we get the impression that he's a proficient fighter now. He's been trained incredibly well. And his balls have well and truly dropped. So he's ready to drop some names. He's ready to make a name for himself. And you just know he's going to get revenge for that eye. He's not going to let that go. He did say when he was younger, an eye for an eye. But his most badass comment was, "Mother, why are you worried? I may have lost an eye, but I've gained a dragon." And that's like, yeah, you know what? That rippled with me. I felt that. And you know he's going to come for revenge on it. So we see Aemond grown up. We then see House Driftmark rock through the entrance doors, and it sort of gets a bit intense. It's sort of, people are sort of looking, and you can already feel the tension in the episode building. We then see a scene where Princess Rhaenys is stood at the weir tree with Rhaena, who has also grown up quite a bit now, and Rhaenyra is behind her as well, escorting her in, and they start talking, and Rhaenyra says, "I'd like to have a word with the princess, please." So Rhaena disappears, and it just leaves Rhaenyra and Rhaenys. Try and say all this when you've had a few shots. Rhaenyra, Rhaenys, Rhaenar, Rhaegar. I get confused with the names, which is why I have to jot it down and make notes. But Princess Rhaenys is stood with Rhaenyra, and they're talking about all the things that have led up to this point. So Rhaenyra says that, "I know this is a trap. I know you've brought us here to try and overthrow my claim, to try and overthrow my son's claim. It's not going to happen." And Princess Rhaenys says, "Well, even if that's the case, you've done worse," and basically refers to the assassination and murder of Laurel. I think that's how I've said it right. Laurel, who got absolutely brutalized at the end of the last episode. There was a hit that was done on him because obviously Rhaenyra and Daemon were talking about how he is the one true threat to their claim. They're talking about the fact that her son was killed, and she says, "You know what, even if you are here, and even if you know this is a trap, and you know this is our chance to overthrow your claim, you've done worse. You killed my son, all in the name of the Targaryens and for you to secure your lineage, which is worse." And it is. So they have a little bit of a back and forth. Rhaenyra tries to compensate that and says, "I had nothing to do with your son's death. I wasn't even involved. I wasn't even there. Do you think I would have done that? Blah, blah, blah." Rhaenys is just sort of staring off into the distance. Clearly doesn't believe a word she's saying. And Rhaenyra says, "Do you know what? Just to sort of compensate this, it's not ever going to replace your son, but just to prove that I've had nothing to do with this, how about our children marry each other?" So it brings the cousins together. It brings the house of High Valyria together, and also the house of Targaryen. So Driftmark and the Targaryens, and also the Hightowers. The Hightowers will be involved in that as well. It'll bring all the houses together, and Rhaenyra says, once that's done, it will mean that your sons, your daughters will always have a place in the throne room, whether they're on the throne or not. They'll always be part of that royal legacy. Rhaenys isn't buying it. She sort of looks and says that's a generous offer, but says, "No, I'm not buying it." And she says, "Tomorrow, the High Towers will bring the Targaryens to their knees, and I will stand alone." So Rhaenys is absolutely boiling with rage, as she would be. Her son was assassinated, all in the name of securing the Targaryen legacy. So she is not letting that go, understandably. And Rhaenyra sort of tucks tail and walks away, tries to offer what she does. Rhaenys isn't having it and says, "No, nothing can replace this, nothing can compensate it." We then move on to Rhaenyra, who is visiting Viserys, and she asks him if the Song of Ice and Fire is true, if he believes in it. She says that we will be divided by this vote, and she says that if you don't sort of stand and fight, I know you're bedridden, I know you're half dead, I know you're ill, but our house is really at risk here, so if you don't stand and vote with us and basically back us up in there, we are going to be in deep shit. And just asks for his blessing, basically, and asks him to bear the burden, help her bear the burden. She then talks about if she's going to take on the responsibilities as queen, and her children are going to take on the responsibility and everything that comes with that, i.e. the public profile, the smiling, the yes sir, no sir, the courtesies, all that kind of thing. She basically says to Viserys, I'm willing to do all that, and I'm willing to make my children do all that, but you have to defend us, you have to stand with me, and you have to make this worthwhile, and make me believe in what you told me about the Song of Ice and Fire. So she leaves it at that. We then see Viserys and Otto. Viserys is getting patched up. As I said, he's got half his face missing, his bandage is off at this point. The prosthetics in this scene is absolutely amazing. You can see all the lining of his jaw, all his skin is stripped away. You can see the lining of his teeth, his gums. It just looks horrendous. It's a mix between sort of Harvey Dent in the Chris Nolan series when he becomes Two-Face and the Doctor from Outlast. It's a beautiful blend of grotesque, nasty, body withering, disease, sepsis. It's obviously a culmination of things where it all started with a little cut on the hand. And if you guys know your lore, I mentioned this in a prior episode, but if you know your lore about Game of Thrones, you know that a lot of people have received the curse from the chair, i.e. the throne. A lot of them have been cut by it, and through the histories, they have died horrendous deaths, or they've lived horrendous lives after they've been cut by it. And it's known as the curse of the throne. So it's something that generates, or goes back generations, but a lot of people have been inflicted by it, and Viserys, unfortunately, is another one of those characters. So he is well and truly on his way to dying sooner rather than later. He looks absolutely withered and done for. Otto comes in. He sees the Maester sort of patching Viserys up. And although he is saying, my kings, or anything I could do for you, you can see on his face that he's taking a little bit of pride in the position that Viserys is in, only because he hasn't forgotten that Viserys casted him out, and Rhaenyra lied about what, her version of events were when it was fed back that she was with Daemon. Otto was actually telling the truth in that scene, although he is a bit of a Littlefinger type character. He is very much pulling the strings of Alicent, and he has been, if you've been paying attention from the beginning of the series. But it's leading up beautifully to this point. It's so well written, and he sort of looks at the king and has that little glint in his eyes to say, anything else I can get you? Have some more tea. And he's like taking happiness and pride almost in the fact that the king is deteriorating, and he at the same time is gaining in power as a result. It's a seesaw effect, and he's loving it, the bastard. We then go to the next scene where we're in the throne room. We are witnessing the petitions being read out. We're witnessing the statements from the Driftmarks, the Valyrian house, obviously the High Towers are in there, Alicent and Otto. Otto says that he's going to speak for the king, so he stood up by the throne, and I thought, yeah, you're getting too comfortable with this, mate. But he gives it the whole, the king can't be here today, he's too ill, I'm going to be in his place, and I'm going to be the one that passes judgment, and I'm going to listen to all these. And I thought, this is going to be so one-sided, is unbelievable. But he goes in and says that he's here to listen to the petitions, and then we get the very first debate on the table, which is from the Valyrian house of Driftmark. So, and he's basically going off saying, do you know what? It's all about the old blood. It used to be old Valyria and the not the Lannisters. It used to be old Valyria and the Targaryens. Where is that gone? Where is that lineage gone? Where's that promise? I'm the eldest son of my father, the Sea Snake. I should absolutely take claim. Goes down the traditional route, basically, and says, we shouldn't even be here having this debate. It should be me. It should be automatic. I don't know why I have to put my case across. This is how it works. Our families are married or wed to be married. This is how it is. And sort of goes into that sort of vibe. Rhaenyra then steps in, tries to make a claim, and says, no, you can't say you're true to your word. This is what happened. You disgraced our house. And then Otto stops her and says, we're going to get to you in a minute. Alicent then steps in and says, hang on, Rhaenyra, we're going to listen to your claim. You have to be fair. This is what this is about. Let the man speak. And I thought, yeah, this is so one-sided. Rhaenyra's not even going to have a chance. We then get to Rhaenyra's claim. So the old Valyrian Driftmark claim is done. Quite a good argument. It was very traditional, very much. It's in our blood, it's in our rights. Why we even stood in this room. And then it goes to Rhaenyra. This is where business picks up. So I was expecting drama from the off anyway. But it goes to Rhaenyra. And then she starts talking about how, her father already said that her family is keeping claims to the throne. She should have a say on who takes the Driftmark throne. It shouldn't be traditional, just like it's not traditional that she's going to ascend the throne of Viserys, so she gets that little dig in there as well. And just as she's about to make the full claim, the doors burst open, and in waddles my man Viserys, who I think, to be honest, guys, is my absolute favourite character in the whole show. I love Daemon, and I know there's a lot of love out there for Daemon just for his sort of brashness and how cocky he is, and his sort of really dry humour, but I think Viserys, in terms of the acting, the way he delivers his character, the whole story arc of him constantly juggling being a father and being a king is absolutely beautifully written, and I think the actor deserves absolute credit for it. I know he's got an absolute CV of great things that he's done before, but the way that he delivers Viserys in this show, not just this episode, is absolutely phenomenal. It's been emotional. You can feel his pain. You can feel his struggle. You can feel that he's absolutely trying to stick to the traditions and, as I said, try and balance being a king and having his duties as a father, as a grandfather. He's trying to keep everybody together, but people just keep pissing on him, and he's just losing his rag, and he's trying his best to live up to the Targaryen name, to make sure that the name continues through his lineage, but also he's a human, and he's also trying to balance that as well as his emotions as a human, as a father, as a grandfather, and as a brother. So it's done throughout the series, and in this scene, he waddles in, he's got this mask on the other side, he's got like a gold-plated mask, kind of reminds me of the Harpies from Game of Thrones. Half side of his face is in a gold mask. He walks in with a cane, and he comes into some badass music, some really high, intense orchestra violin music, and everyone's like, yeah. Alicent's kind of looking like she's seen a ghost. Otto can't believe his eyes. The House of Driftmark are looking as if to say, is this actually happening? Damon's giving it a little smirk and nod, and it's like business is picking up. So it was a great scene, probably one of my favourite scenes in the whole episode. It was beautifully directed, beautifully produced, and the reactions of the characters seeing Viserys walk into the throne room and almost stamp his authority as if to say, yeah, I might be ill, I might be dead, I might be dead tomorrow. I look like Gollum, but I am the fucking king, and I'm here to remind you all of that. And it just felt like that. He didn't really say anything until he gets to the top of the stairs, and he says, I'm going to be sitting in the throne today. And that just cemented the absolute presence of this guy, and I think he's an on-screen legend. He's absolutely brilliant in this series, and such a great cast. So we get the epic scene where he walks in. Also, I thought, hang on a minute, in one of the prior scenes, the milk of the poppy wasn't given to Viserys, he refused it. So I'm wondering if actually it is something in the tea that is sedating him. It is making him lose his mind. It is making him feel a little bit weird. He is sort of going off the rails. Is that what's... Are they drugging him? Are they poisoning him slowly? And is that what's making his condition worse and accelerate rather than get better? So he dismissed the tea, and all of a sudden he's able to walk. He's got a bit more about him. He's got a bit more energy. And judging by the looks of the faces of Alicent, Otto, and some of the Driftmark guys, I absolutely think that he's being poisoned. It'll probably come out in a later episode, but I absolutely think they're slowly doing him in. So anyway, Mr. King Viserys Targaryen is on the throne today. He's saying, I'm overseeing this proceeding. Otto's like, yeah, no worries, my lord. Backs down. Backs his ass down. Viserys kicks him out of the seat and says, this is my fucking throne for today. Thank you very much. Takes his seat. Daemon helps him up the stairs as well, which I thought was really good, because one of the Kingsguard escorts Viserys in. He sort of stood behind him. Just as he's about to take a step onto the steps itself up to the throne, Viserys says, like, I'm okay, leave me alone, and tries to get up himself. He drops the crown as he walks up the stairs, which I think is a foreshadowing of things to come. He is going to be gone soon, guys, unfortunately, but what a character he is. He picks the crown back up with the very little energy that he has left, puts it back on his head, and Daemon comes up behind him, links his arm, and just as he's about to turn around and say, I just told you to fuck off, I can do it, he actually looks around to Daemon and says, I told you I can do it, and he realizes it's Daemon, and then's like, yeah, this is cool, I'll let Daemon do it. So there's a really nice scene where they actually mutually agree. These two have been at heads pretty much since the beginning of the season, but in this particular episode, in this particular scene, they put their differences aside for the greater good of the Targaryens, for the greater good of what they know is right for their lineage, and also just to appear strong, to show people that no matter their differences, no matter how ill they are, They are Targaryens and they are bound with blood. So he lets Daemon walk him up the stairs. He sits him in the chair, and Daemon's like, yeah, we got this. So it's a very powerful scene. We then see Viserys, and this is the thing I noticed from the very beginning of the episode, and when they started talking about the succession, who's doing this, who's doing that. I wondered why we were even talking about it, because Viserys has said from the off quite clearly to everybody that Rhaenyra is going to take claim to the throne. She's going to become queen when he dies, and then that's going to pass down to her children. That's already been agreed. So why are we even doing this whole thing? And Viserys actually points that out. He sits down and says, why are we even talking about it? I said before who the successors are going to be and why they're going to be it. So can I just ask someone to explain to me why we're sat here having this petition? I was like, yes, this is exactly what I was thinking. We then hear from Vaemond, who is the eldest son of the sea snake. So the sea snake's dead. He's in the sea. He's gone. He is the eldest son. So we lost Laurel, who was wed to Rhaenyra. He was assassinated, murdered. Nobody knows who done it at this point. We know it was Daemon and Rhaenyra. But Vaemond is now stepping in and saying, it should be to my family. It should be to Lucerys, my children. I've got the lineage of the sea snake. I've got the lineage of my actual house. How can you say that your daughter and your side has claim to my house? Although we're bringing houses together, this is still my lineage. This is still my blood. I don't even know why I have to sort of dispute it with you. Gets a bit tasty with Viserys. And all of a sudden, Rhaenyra sort of steps in and says, how dare you question the king? This is this is that. It should be my children. We were married. And then Vaemond sort of says, yeah, you were married, but we know it was all a farce. We know you didn't love him, all that kind of thing. And Rhaenyra says, no, this is how the claim works. You're saying you want to be traditional. You're saying you want to have everything done the right way, the traditional way. I was married to your brother. It was our children, i.e. my children, that should ascend that throne. Vaemond's absolutely not having it whatsoever. And this is the bit where it gets super crazy, intense, super quick. So it goes from 0 to 100. So Vaemond's going off about this, saying, I'm not bowing to anybody. This should be for my house. Rhaenyra's saying that it was cemented in marriage. It should be her children. End of discussion. And she's essentially making a claim for herself. Vaemond calls her out on that and says, you're just making a claim for yourself. I will not bow to you and your... And he's about to say bastards, and then Viserys says, I would encourage you to hold your tongue and think about what you're about to say. He looks at Daemon, and Daemon says, go on, say it, like that. And you think, when Daemon looks you square in the eye and says, say it, and he's encouraging you to say something, if you're going to say something after that, you are absolutely dead. He's going to go for you. So Vaemond swallows an intense pill of confidence and looks around and says, I am not bowing down to your bastards. And he actually comes out and says it. Looks Viserys square in the face as well as he says it. Viserys is like, oh my god, he's actually got the balls to do it. And then he looks at Rhaenyra and says, and you're nothing but a whore. And just as he's saying that, he looks at Viserys. Viserys pulls out the Valyrian dagger and says, I will have your tongue for saying that. Just as that's finishing, we cut back to Vaemond. Vaemond stood there, and all of a sudden, half of his head just falls off. You see his tongue sticking out. Half his skull's missing. You can see his brain. You can see his cheekbones. And Daemon's essentially coming behind him and just cleaved him with his claymore sword. Just cut him straight down the side of his head. And it just slips off the top of his head, and you just see Daemon stood there with his sword. I'm like, yes. The best bit was Daemon then saying, let him keep his tongue for now. And he's just sliced half of his head off. Otto, the Hand of the King, then shouts out, disarm him, take his sword off of him. So they take his sword off of him. Rhaenyra runs to Viserys and says, oh my god, you okay? And there's a little bit of a tussle. But other than that, Daemon absolutely silenced him. And it just goes to show really that Daemon could do what the fuck he wants. Even now. So really, really good. That was probably my favourite scene. I think a lot of you will agree with me on that one as well. That would be your favourite scene. But that, and also Viserys coming into the throne room. Just how he reasserts himself as king. Despite people knowing that he's dying, despite people knowing that he's on his way out, is absolutely brilliant TV. So, loved it. The next scene is Princess Rhaenys watching the body of Vhagar being, what can I only describe as being glued back together. There's loads of maesters trying to clean him up, make sure all the pieces are together, make sure his body's intact. One of the maesters says that, you don't need to see this. Rhaenys is like, yeah, I do. And she's watching the body being cleaned. And it's just a powerful scene because there's fire going on in the background. They're obviously stood in the cremation bit where the furnaces are. The maesters are trying to make him appear like he did before Daemon sliced half of his face off. And she's just sat there just staring blankly at what they're doing. You can absolutely feel that she's absorbing all that emotion. That's the second son now that she's lost. That's essentially her lineage gone, apart from the daughters. And she's just fire and fury at this point. She's just absolutely glazed, blank-faced, just staring at the body. And we just know she is going to do something about that massively. I think this is the tipping point. She knew that her son was assassinated. She knew he was murdered, but she couldn't prove it. She couldn't do anything about it. Whereas this happened in front of everybody, and she's absolutely not going to have it. So she's just absorbing everything that's happened. She goes a little bit monotone when the maester's talking to her, but you can tell she's going to go full Goku mood in the next episode. We then get a scene where we're in the Great Hall. Viserys is sat down, everybody's sat around having a feast. So Rhaenyra, Daemon, all the kids, Alicent, all the houses are sat there, and they're having a feast together. Viserys sort of plays the king and says, we need to put our differences aside, because before this goes on, the kids are sort of taking digs at each other, saying, oh, haha, you can't get it up, and if you need your girlfriend to experience a good time, let me know, and all this sort of shit. They're jostling at each other yet again. Viserys slams his cup down, stands up and says, we need to remember what we're here to do. We are here for each other. We're family. We're related. We seem to have lost our way with that. If you're not going to be on par with the crown, you're not going to be on par with your lineage, do it for your old man. Do it for the lineage of your grandfather. Do it for me. I care about all of you. I love all of you. We're marrying each other. There's cousins here that are going to be marrying each other, and we need to let the past go. We need to let the events of the past stay where they are. We need to move forward, and we should toast to it. And we then see Viserys everyone's like, yeah. We then see Viserys struggling a little bit. Aegon at this point is taunting the cousin and saying, if you're worried about where to put it, at least you're going to lie with a woman eventually. Now, they're still sort of taunting each other. Viserys does his speech, and he also says as part of that speech, it gladdens him, but also saddens him to see the faces that he loves grow apart. And part of what he wants is to see his lineage cemented, not just as a king, but as a father, as a grandfather, as a brother. And he puts that in his speech, and some people are sort of taken back by it a little bit. He also takes his mask off and says he wants people to see who he actually is. He knows he hasn't got long left. He wants people to remember him for being a father, a brother, and a husband, and asks them to let go of how they feel for him, because he's not going to be walking the earth much longer. Very, very powerful scene, very emotional, and again, the way that the actor delivers this is phenomenal. Alicent is sort of taken by it. Rhaenyra is the first one to react to that speech, stands up and raises a glass and says, I just want to thank Alicent for being by my father's side. I love my father, even in the face of tyranny, in the face of everything that's going on, all the backstabbing, all the lies, all the shit stirring. You continue to stand by him. You continue to not let him go, and you continue to stand there and do what was your duty as a queen. So for that, I toast to you, and also I apologize. And I think Alicent sort of looks teary-eyed, takes it back. I think it's all just to make it look good. I think this is all just a ploy to make sort of Viserys happy in his final moments. The second he dies, this is all going to go back to shit. But in these scenes, everyone's playing their part. Alicent then says, we're both mothers, we both love our children, and we've forgotten what we share, which is common ground. We've got a lot more in common than we have in differences. We need to remember that. And then she says to Rhaenyra, you'll make a fine queen. So she's kind of then also saying, I agree with you, sort of stepping into the throne, stepping into the role as queen when your father dies, kind of ahead of time agreeing to that claim that she's always said, and Alicent's not always agreed to. So in front of Viserys, she toasts to her and says, happy days, everyone's complimenting each other. We then see Aegon taunting Jace about not satisfying his new wife. And then in response, Jace gets up and dances with Aegon's sister just to wind him up. So they're, again, the kids are still jostling. They're still going to be kids at heart. They're still at each other's throats, and you can cut the air with a knife. Alicent's sort of looking around. Rhaenyra's looking around. Daemon's kind of smirking, waiting for something to happen. But Viserys looks around, sees the two kids dancing, sees Aegon having a drink. He sees Aemond with his nice eye patch looking all deadly, and he kind of gets a nice kick out of it. He looks around and realizes, like, do you know what? It's not all that bad. Alicent and Rhaenyra have apologized to each other. She's accepted her claim to the throne. Rhaenyra's apologized for all the shit stirring and all the rumors. It's all good. It's all good. And in this moment, you can see that he lets go of his life force a little bit. He lets go of what he's fighting. Starts coughing. He starts sort of gasping for air. And all of a sudden, he's taken from the throne room back to his chambers. And basically, this is the point where, yet again, the peace goes to absolute shit. And it just cements that when he dies, this is all going to go full-blown warfare. There's going to be a rebellion. There's going to be a claim for the throne. It's going to go absolutely mental. So Aemon then does one final toast to Jace and says to Jace, Luke, and Joffrey, you're all handsome, wise, and strong. And then as obviously he's mocking the fact that he's not going to be able to get it up and all that kind of stuff. And you're strong. And then he says, well, what do you mean by that? What? Say that again. Say that I'm not strong. And he says, you are all handsome and strong. And then all of a sudden a fight breaks out. Aemond and Jace are having a bit of a tussle. Rhaenyra jumps in, splits them up. Daemon jumps in as well. Alicent splits. They're all the adults are pulling the kids apart. Rhaenyra then says to Alicent, I think it's best that we go back to Dragonstone. Daemon escorts the kids back to their chambers. Then Alicent says, oh yeah, but it's too early. You've only just got here. It'd be nice that you could stay a bit longer. And I thought, why is she so keen for her to stay? I think there's going to be a trap. I think if you guys again know your lore and you were listening to what Joffrey said in Game of Thrones, there is a certain way that Rhaenyra dies. I hope it's not in this season. Or it might be that Viserys dies in episode 9 and Rhaenyra gets it in episode 10. Who knows? But there's a certain way that Rhaenyra dies. So I won't spoil it for you, but if you guys know your lore, you know what I'm talking about. And I'm thinking, is this the time where this is going to happen? Who knows? So anyway, Alicent says it's a shame for you to go so early. You've just got here. And Rhaenyra's like, yeah, do you know what? We'll drop the kids back. We'll drop them back to Dragonstone. And then I will come back on Dragonback. So I'll get back here super quick. And Alicent's, yeah, I would like that. I'd like it. So it puts me on edge because I think it's not going to end well. The second Viserys dies, and there's hints of him dying at the end of this episode, which I'll get into in a sec, it looks very much like it's not going to end well at all. So watch this space, but that's what they've agreed. Rhaenyra saying she's coming back. She disappears. We then see a hooded figure outside of the city passing on a message to a lady I haven't quite clocked or noticed before. She seems to be from Dorne. She's got that sort of accent. So it could be someone from House Martell. But the hooded figure is passing on a message to this lady. And she says, there's been a lot of goings on in the castle I hear. And the hooded figure's like, yes. So, and obviously someone's relaying all the information, everything that's happening within the keep to this woman. So there's obviously going to be an outside threat as well. So again, if you know your lore, the rebellion's going to start at any point now. And the Martells could well be part of it. So when that all kicks off, which I think is going to happen and culminate the second Viserys dies, I think this house, I'm assuming it's the Martells, are going to be involved in it as well, because they're getting drip-fed information from within the castle walls itself. So they've got a heads up on things. They know about the tension, they know about the claims, they know about who's doing what, and they've obviously got something to say about it as well, which is why they've got a little spy on the inside. The final scene is we see Alicent giving Viserys a drink. Again, it looks like she says it's milk of the poppy, it'll help you, but how much is it going to actually be helping him? What's in that fucking tea? Who knows? And it looks like she's looking after him. She's led at his bedside, she gives him the tea, and Viserys kind of goes into a little bit of a trance, a little bit of an out-of-body moment where he's led there and he says to her, you know, I'm really sorry, and I just want to say to you, what Aegon saw is true. So at this point, what I gather is happening here, because this is slightly away from the lore, Viserys thinks that he's talking to Rhaenyra. So Alicent says, what do you mean? And if you recall previous conversations with Viserys, I think it was in episode 2 or 3, when he was talking to Rhaenyra about her claim to the throne, he was telling her about the story of the Song of Ice and Fire. And he said about how there is a prince that was promised, i.e. one of her children, and says that you're destined to take the throne as queen. It's different. It's something that you're going to bring it into the lineage, bring into our way of carrying our names forward. So Alicent thinks that Viserys is talking to her. She thinks that he's sounding mind. He was just sat in the room saying his little speech to people. They all understood him. She understood him. He was stood up in the procession. He was sort of stood there saying who can do what. She stood up against Vhagar and all the insults that he gave against Rhaenyra. So she thinks he's talking to her, and you would, but the way he's talking about this story and what he's referring to is the scenes when he was with Rhaenyra. So he thinks it's Rhaenyra that sat there. So anyway, he says, I am sorry. What Aegon saw in his dream was true. Starts talking about the prince that was promised and the fight against the darkness, i.e. the White Walkers. We know that from Game of Thrones. The Long Night, that's what's going to happen. So Alicent at this point absolutely is concrete in her belief that Viserys is telling her that he got it wrong. It's not Rhaenyra, it's not any of her children, it's Alicent and Alicent's children, and she's hearing it from his mouth. So she's kind of confused, and she's saying, are you saying what I think you're saying? And he's like, you know what you need to do. And then we get a final scene, a panning shot of Alicent walking away and says, I will do what I must, my king. And then we see the Valyrian dagger, which was nicely shot in, as if to say, shit is going to get ugly. And we assume at this point that Viserys dies. I don't know. There's a panning shot of him led in the bed, and it's kind of coming out towards the ceiling, and he's kind of talking away to himself. It goes really, really quiet, and the camera slowly sort of dissolves to darkness. So it could be that we did also witness the death of Viserys in this episode. He's kind of done everything now. His character arc is beautifully tied up. He's said everything that he's needed to say. He's done everything that he's needed to do, and it fits perfectly. So this could well be the end of Viserys, guys. If they start episode 9 with his death, shit is going to get crazy. But it's also beautifully written. They've done everything that it was how it was supposed to be. He's got his piece across, and there's actually a complete cross wire of communication going on with Alicent and Viserys, because like I said, she thinks that he is talking to her, but he's not in sound mind. He's drinking whatever the hell's in that cup, milk of the poppy, whatever it is. He's off in fairyland, and he thinks he's talking to Rhaenyra, like what was going on in the beginning of the episode when Rhaenyra says, no, it's me, father, it's me, and he thought it was Alicent. So it's happened again. So Alicent has taken it that Viserys has given her the go-ahead to reinsert her claim as queen, because she's got the right to it, and talks about Aegon. So, you know, it's all culminating into, yet again, each house thinks that they've got a claim, each house thinks that they've got a stake on this, and they've all got their own reasons to put themselves forward for their own lineage, but also the lineage of their children to succeed them as well. So it's going to get mental. But what an episode, guys. Absolutely phenomenal. I loved the way that they did the prosthetics of Viserys. Everyone's moved on 6 years from episode 7, but there's not a huge time gap. It's just the way that the kids look. All of a sudden they're really, really old, and they're sort of skilled in combat, but their personality is still there. That they still carry that forward beautifully. Daemon had some amazing scenes as usual. I loved Vhagar's head getting lopped off, or partially lopped off, and the one-liner he gave about his tongue still being intact. Said let him keep it. And then my favourite scene for me was when Viserys sort of walks into the throne room, and we get that badass sort of Targaryen fist bump. We get the music coming in. We get Daemon helping him sit on the throne. Everyone's shocked to see him, and he just gives that. Even on death's door, Viserys has still got that will, that power, and that authority and that presence to turn heads and turn tides and make people listen to him. Just goes to show how powerful his character is. And I think he's going to be really, really sorely missed when he goes. I think it is a case of he's either gone now, and we're going to see that at the beginning of episode 9, or he's definitely going to go over the next 2 episodes. But by season 2, he's going to be gone. But for me, he's an absolute highlight of this show. Hopefully they can carry on sort of the diversity of the acting, the way that the voice dialogue's delivered, the way that the characters move forward with this story when his death becomes part of it. Hopefully that goes on into season 2 and we see something amazing. But for me, this is the absolute best episode so far. If I was to give it a rating, it's a solid, perfect 10 out of 10. My all-time favorite episode so far. This show is really, really peaking. I cannot say the same for Rings of Power. It's nosediving. It's the complete opposite, unfortunately. But this show at the minute is just the absolute masterpiece that you want to see in any TV show. It's full of drama. It's got political intrigue in there. There's interesting characters. They're all diverse. They're all unique. They've got their own qualities, their own sort of skill presets. They've all got their own personality, their own emotion. And you believe it. You want to hear from each of these characters, even if they're absolute dicks like Aegon is, and he's a bit of a perv. He's still got his own presence on screen, and he's still got his own place in the story and in the arc. And all of the story arcs for each character is being done beautifully. It's masterful storytelling. The script writing, the dialogue is perfect. The way that the scenes are put together is amazing. Cinematography is on point. The lighting, the shades, the music, it's all beautifully weaved together. None of it feels rammed down your throat. It just feels like you're witnessing almost a movie that's being broken up into chunks. And when you get that on this sort of level, it's the absolute dream of any TV show that you witness. So can't wait for episode 9. It is sad that we're closing in on the end of the season, but all good things have to come to an end. We're going to see season 2. They've signed off for season 3 and 4 as well, I think. So this one is going to continue to run for a while. And there are some huge events that are coming up. And those of you that have read the books will absolutely know what I'm talking about. And word for Rhaenyra, I think that thing is coming sooner rather than later. So stay tuned. I will see you again for episode 9 review next week, guys. But let me know in the comments, what did you think of episode 8? Did you enjoy it? Is there anything in there that you think could have been done better, or did you think it was perfect as well, like myself? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, guys, take care of yourselves. I'll see you in the next video or stream. Peace.